What's up? Not a car guy here. Today I will be replacing the rotors and brake pads on my 2004 Ford Mustang GT, and I got my buddy Josh with me, and he's gonna be the car guy in this, and I'm gonna follow along and try to turn a wrench or two while we're at it. So let's get to it.
Giddy up.
Jack up the car and place the jack stands. Normally you want to break the lug nuts before you put the car up in the air, but Josh wanted to test out his new toy without breaking the lugs. Josh wants to test out his new, what's that, impact?
Yeah.
Impact drill?
Yep, impact driver.
Impact driver. So we're going to test it out, see how it works. Josh is very excited with his new toy.
And that's the small one.
This is what happens when you buy used cars. You find weird things. Like one of the lug nuts on my wheel is different than all of the other sizes of lug nuts. Here's a peek at where I place my jack and jack stands, just in case you're new to your car and looking for a place to put them. You can go ahead and lower the car onto the jack stands in that position. Alright, to replace your brake pads and your rotors, first thing we gotta do is take the caliper off, and we're gonna take both pieces of the caliper off. So that's 2 screws on the outside and then 2 screws behind, and this will come off in 2 pieces. Once we do that, we'll be able to hit this piece with brake clean and get it all cleaned up before we put the new brake pads in and put it back on. And then once you have that off, the rotor just comes right out. Unless you've got these clips here, you might have to pry those off. I don't know if your car has them or not, but mine does, and so we'll just clip them and throw them away. If your slider pin starts spinning when you're trying to get the screws out, grab a pair of vice grips to hold the sliders in place while you turn the screw. After you get out the 2 screws in the slider pins, you can unscrew the 2 bolts in the body of the caliper.
So now that we've got the brake unbolted, we're just gonna get our caliper up and out of the way. And I don't know where my clips went, so we're just gonna improvise with some zip ties, and we're just going to thread this through, and then we're gonna hang it on a bolt up there so that we're not putting any tension on the brake line. Don't film that. Hang that up there, off of my glove, preferably. I'll just hang out of the way. These are the old brakes. Looking pretty small, or pretty thin, pretty low. Good time to replace them. Cleaning down these surfaces. Looks like we gotta scrape some of this off.
Now, particularly what you're brushing is where the brake pad is going to be seated.
Yeah. There's gonna be a little shim that goes in here, and then the brake pad sits inside of that. But I'm just cleaning off these surfaces because we can get to them, and we might as well clean them while it's here. It looks like he maybe painted these. I think that's what that is.
If your rotors have metal clips on them, you can go ahead and take them off with some clippers. You won't be putting them back on, so you can just cut them off.
Is that breaking free for you over there?
I'm getting the clips off first.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Alright, from here we're going to put on our nice new shiny rotors, and then we'll show you how to compress the brake calipers and install the brake pads as well.
So now we're going to put our rotor back on, But before we do that, we're going to pre-compress these pistons, because what happens is that with your old pads, you have worn out all of the stopping material, whereas the new pads have quite a bit more stopping material. Double that, and you need to have those pistons pushed out further so that these pads can fit down over the top of the rotor.
Note, before you compress the caliper pistons, make sure you loosen the cap on your brake master cylinder reservoir and take some of the fluid out before proceeding.
So, my bad, I forgot to loosen the cap before I pushed in one of the plungers, and so we're gonna leak a little bit, but we've got a rag here, so we're gonna catch it, and then we'll pull out some extra fluid, and that'll give us more room to compress more of the brakes, and then we won't have a leak.
Brake fluid is highly corrosive and will eat through all of your engine components if the drops get too far down.
It's like alien. It's like the alien blood.
The xenomorph?
Xenomorph.
So as the piston gets compressed, it pushes brake fluid back through the lines up into that reservoir, and you have to make sure that that reservoir doesn't overflow. Typically you want to take that cap off first so it doesn't build up pressure. So now we're going to pump out the brake fluid, and so that we can continue compressing the pistons on the caliper.
Maybe not. Okay, never mind, not pumping. Why aren't you pumping?
Josh broke his pump, so I'm just going to get a straw, suck it out, and then spit. Does that sound like a good idea, Josh?
No, sounds like a terrible idea.
Ah, see, I'm not a car guy, so that's why I got Josh here. We found another pump to give us a little more room in the brake fluid reservoir.
Okay, clip it up. Tip it up. Just gonna pop these in for my own amusement. More in place as we go.
Now Josh is placing the brake pad clips in the caliper bracket.
Just 2 clips. Get them down snug so that you stop. Okay.
Brake pads usually come with some grease. Take a dab of the grease and lube the slots of the clips that will fit the ends of the brake pads. And you can grease up the ends of the brake pads for good measure.
Now, one thing to note is on your brake pads, you should be able to see these little indexing marks. They determine whether or not it is facing out or facing in. And if you've got the wider marks, those go on the back side. If you've got the these lower indexing, they're on the outside of the tire. So inside, outside. Let's just fit in here like this. Just like that. And then clip off our zip tie here. And then our caliper just sits right over. Oop, well, let's decoil our brake line here. There we go. There. Now, if we've compressed enough, which we may not have, slide over. Yeah, we'll compress them a little bit more. This way. Well, we just can't go any further, can we? Well, that's as far as the pistons go in. And there we go. Now we can thread our bolts back through.
So just that little bit.
Just that little bit was enough.
Before you put the caliper on, remember that there is a third clip that goes on the inside of the caliper. You're probably going to forget even after watching this video.
Definitely went in easier yesterday. Into the middle, and so you see how it's doing that?
Yeah.
Well, what we're gonna do is on this back side, now we're just gonna bend this clip. We're gonna bend this clip so that it comes up over that catch. And then now, just like that. Oh, there you go.
Alright, now that we got the front brakes changed, we're going to put the tire back on, tighten up the lug nuts, lower the car, and then do the backs. When you're jacking up the rear, you can place the jack on the differential, but before you lift the car in the air, make sure to chock the front wheels, because the parking brake only applies to the rear, and once it goes in the air, there's nothing to keep your car from rolling. After you get the car in the air, you can place the jack stands under the axle. Brake free because you've got the emergency brake on. Go ahead and take the wheels off.
Soon.
Hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet.
Got quick lessons from Car Guy Josh here. Car Guy Josh, what do you got to teach us?
So when it comes to lugs, you want to be looking out for your lugs rounding over on these points here. I don't know if you can see that. Zoom in. They're just starting to get a little bent, a little rounded over, and so when you start to see that, the bolt is getting fatigued, or the nut is getting fatigued, and you want to replace them as soon as possible, because if they're gonna fail at the worst opportune time, and that's with your tire completely bolted on, and you won't be able to get them off, and you will hate yourself for not switching these out sooner.
So I'm just gonna take these clips off real quick. Take out the two bolts on the caliper bracket. Yeah, don't leave your parking brake on when you try to take this thing off, because it won't go.
If you need to, you can just kind of rest it on itself for now. I was able to just kind of, yep, pretty much just like that.
If you want to take pressure off the brake hoses, you can use some zip ties to hang the caliper off your quad shock. You can now undo the screw holding in the caliper bracket. Then take the bracket off and give it a clean. After you're done cleaning, it's time to compress the caliper piston. Here's Josh explaining that there's a little trick to compressing the rear calipers.
Basically, you can see these little indents here. So these little pins index into there, and then they twist it, and that is what spins your caliper back. like I did on the fronts, but apparently that is a little different in the backs here. They require this style, which I've never really run across before, so live and learn.
The rear brake pads are a little different. Like the fronts, they also have 2 clips to put on, but they are much more annoying to work with. Go ahead and grease the surfaces of the caliper bracket that you'll slide the clips into.
Because they may pop in a little easier if the brakes are all together. That'd be something else we could try.
You might need to use a screwdriver to pry the clips in enough for them to slide into place. Here you see me successfully putting in the pads, but be sure that you're probably going to be doing a lot of this. And this. And that. After gaining a little more experience doing this, you might have an easier time leaving the bracket on the wheel assembly and putting the pads in that way. As you can see here, they might slide in a little easier without fumbling as much. Be satisfied, can you? But you're probably still going to be doing a lot of this. And God! Hey, look, a new shiny rotor. After you secure the pads in the bracket, you can slide it over the rotor. The rotor will go right in between the brake pads. You can take your 2 bolts and use them to lock the caliper bracket into place. After you secure the bracket, you can take the other part of the caliper and put it into place. Is all this red paint or blood or?
What's that?
That's coming from my fingers, I don't know.
You bleeding?
Yeah, I'm bleeding somewhere.
Bleeding in my driveway, Will?
No, just all over my car.
Just had the thing pressure washed. You know how much pride I take in my driveway?
After you put on the caliper piece, put in the other 2 bolts and tighten them down. After that, just put on the wheels, lower the car, and you're done. Alright, that's it. That's how you change your brakes on your 2004 Ford Mustang GT. Any final words, Josh?
Giddy up.
Is that one word or 2?
That's all I can say.
You want another crack at that?
Yeah. Anything else to say?
Well,
Cars need to stop.
Well, you heard the man. Thanks for watching. I'm not a car guy, but I will be.
Giddy up.